So we have been working with the federal government for some time to really advance a Calgary strategy, to really help them think about what they need to do for Alberta and what they specifically need to do for Calgary. So I was happy today to see a few things that really directly reflect some of the things we've been working with the federal government on. The first is that, as we know, they've made these historic commitments to infrastructure, but it's been hard to get, in some cases, to get the money out the door. And that's largely because of the deals that have to be made between the provinces and the federal government before the money flows to the municipality. So a suggestion that we've been making is to use the mechanism of the gas tax, which is money that we can get directly to the cities, to really just start that money moving. So we were really happy to see the one-time top-up of the gas tax today, which for the City of Calgary this year will mean about $68 million. Now, of course, we'd love to see this be permanent, and we would love to see some of the money that is tied up in bilateral arrangements with the feds and the province move to this gas tax mechanism. So this is a great way to prove to the federal government that municipalities can get that money to work right away, to get people to work, and to get stuff that we need to built. We've also been suggesting that it is really time to invest in economic diversification for Alberta in a much more thoughtful way. So I was happy to see the $100 million increase to Western economic diversification. The important thing here, though, is to make sure that that funding is really going to Alberta and to Calgary, and it isn't about kind of traditional economic diversification that we've seen in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, but it really is about innovation. It's very targeted towards the kind of things we need in Calgary, including helping us deal with our talent pipeline in order to attract more tech talent. Nearly $1 billion for the Green Municipal Fund, which is a really good program that helps us do small and medium scale greening projects, greening our infrastructure, greening our grid, other such things. One of the interesting things about the Green Municipal Fund that was announced today is that nonprofit organizations will be able to apply directly for that money without having to go through governments, which is also a great way of helping, seniors' homes, for example, get some energy efficiency retrofits, reduce their operating costs without dealing with a lot of red tape. So that's also very good news. This is the first time I can ever remember that a federal budget started with a discussion and commitment to affordable housing. In fact, for many, many years, the federal government sort of reneged on all of its commitments to affordable housing. So I was really happy to see that. Now, the specific programs that were announced today, a new buyers fund, be helpful, help us with that stress test on the mortgage issue that we've been having trouble with here in Calgary. Incentives for rental construction, frankly, is something we were asking for a decade ago. Probably not as relevant to Calgary in today's market, but still a helpful thing to make sure that there are market solutions to affordable housing. But the most important thing was renewing the commitment to the federal housing strategy to build 100,000 units of affordable housing across the country. Here in Calgary alone, we still need at least 5,000 units of affordable housing built in order to deal with our waiting lists. And so every little bit helps, and it's helpful for us to be able to move forward on that. Now, what we didn't get today, though, and I really wasn't expecting it in a federal budget, but we really need the federal government to come to the table with their plan for Calgary. Calgary has long been the economic engine of this country. We now have the highest unemployment rate in Canada again, and it's clear that we've disassociated ourselves from a national economy that is in many ways firing on all cylinders. So it's really, really important for us to understand, both from people who want to be premier, but also people who want to be Prime Minister, what's your Calgary plan? And certainly some elements of it were delivered upon today across the country, but we really need to be very specific about how we get this engine of the Canadian economy growing again.
The gas tax, is that a doubling then for Calgary? Is that a $68 million increase, or it brings it up
$68 million increase in this year.
Is that doubling?
Yes, that's a doubling.
It is. And what can you use that for?
So the gas tax has a number of restrictions on it. It has to be used for transportation, for green investments, or for certain cultural investments. So certainly this is not free money that we can all jump up and down and say, here are a bunch of new things to build, but it certainly will help us in terms of balancing our budget, in terms of delivering on some of the capital that we've already talked about.
So does that mean bringing 2020 capital projects into 19? Is it that radical? Or?
Probably no. Probably what it'll help us do is manage some of our debt, manage some of our borrowing, bring down those interest costs. I wouldn't imagine that this would lead to an announcement of something brand new and exciting.
quite.
But it's great. But it's great. In the long term, managing that borrowing, managing that interest, bringing us down, makes us all breathe a little bit easier, makes us all feel better about the decisions that we're making on our budget.
I wasn't quite sure whether you were praising the Western Economic Diversification funds or whether they need to be modified.
It's a necessary first step. Having the money in place is really important, and that's a good thing. What we now have to do is make sure that money goes towards the highest priority and most impactful investments, especially here in Calgary. Traditionally, we haven't gotten a lot of WED money in Calgary because we were doing so well, but it is time for some of that to be invested here.